Hey everybody, welcome to The Early Edge, a mentorship podcast for next generation leaders where we share insights we wish we had learned earlier in our careers.
We want to equip you to learn more, grow faster, and thrive in both your work and personal life. I'm Jay.
And I'm Jeff. Let's get into today's episode. Jay, it's great to be back in the studio with you. I'm pretty excited. Spring is here. The weather outside is getting better. All the snow here is melted.
Yard work is happening.
Yeah, I'm feeling the pain from that.
Good job.
We still need a little more snow out west, so got a couple ski trips in. We're going to get at least one more in, but they still could use a little bit more snow. So
yes,
warm here and cold there, please.
Yes.
We want to talk about some tools, I think is what you and I would call them. You and I have been in our careers for a handful of decades. We won't share ages.
Yes.
And along the way, we've picked up a lot of tools that we use for very specific purposes.
Or in some cases that we see being used or adjacent to the work we do. And sometimes I remember having to hear of a term or a phrase or a tool or a process in a meeting and then go leave and Google it to find out what it meant.
Yeah. Some of these you and I picked up early in our careers. Some of them we've used more recently. Yeah. Maybe we've known about them for a few years. We use them all the time. And just a reminder that if you are new to this podcast, we think anybody will find value from this content, but our target audience is individuals in the first couple decades of their career, people in their 20s, 30s, maybe 40s, who are just seeking and learning and looking for ways to be more productive in the workplace or maybe even a little bit better at home.
Yeah, sure. And we're not going to do we're going to attempt to not do an academic deep dive on certain tools and prepare you to walk away and use it. The objective today is to make you aware of some of these things, perhaps the context in which they would be used, and then you can go do deeper dive or maybe bring it back to your workplace and say, I heard this podcast, I have this situation, maybe we ought to try this thing.
Most of you who've been listening for a little while know that our target length for these episodes is somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. This could easily be a 3-hour episode.
Yes.
But we're not going to do that.
Joe Rogan, look out.
Yes. We're going to cover, I don't know, there's probably 8 or 10 tools we want to talk about, and we're going to do it in 20, 25 minutes. So we're going to keep this moving, and the idea is not to go deep, but tell you some tools that we use, why we use them, when you could potentially use them, let you go do some research if you are interested in any of these.
Yeah, great. Let's go.
All right. I think we've got 2 to 3 different episodes we're going to do. This first episode today is all about tools that help when you have questions about your team and how it operates, operating performance, ownership, authority, decision-making.
How stuff gets done.
All
that
stuff. It. Yeah. Who's making the donuts?
Yes. Who is making the donuts?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Yes.
And if they're not made fresh and if they're not made on time and you don't know whose fault it is or who needs to be doing what.
They probably need some of these tools.
They should get these tools.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right. Are we starting with ownership and decision-making?
Yeah. Let's do that. And then we'll get into operational performance.
Love it. Okay. Why don't you kick it off with the first tool we want to share? And again, we're going to give you a little bit the name of this tool, a little bit of background, maybe a story here and there, but we're going to keep this moving.
Yeah. So the first 2 tools really are ones that come up very frequently in our organizational performance work or our organizational transformation work. And they are simply who does what in a process. And the second one is who gets to decide, or who are the decision makers in that process. So the who does what is an ownership question, and the most common tool that we see is called RACI, which is RACI. It stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consulted, and Informed. When do you use this, Jeff?
A lot of times when I see teams that want to move faster or where there's a lack of clarity to get things done, this is a good tool to check to see, is there clear ownership? And or if there's not, then we talk about the process and we break down, well, then who's responsible for it? Who really owns the process and is responsible? Who's accountable to it? And then, of course, the last 2 are there people that are just consulted for input related to this, or are some people then just told, once we decide who the owner is and all these other things about the process. So, break that down a little bit more. And I do have a couple of points I'll add to each of these.
because this one is likely something most of our listeners have already heard or will be hearing at some point soon in their careers, the RACI model, we're going to dig in a little more deeply because it's so important, and it's amazingly common where an important process will have perhaps multiple owners or people who think they are accountable for the ultimate delivery, or they will have an important process and nobody will think they have ultimate responsibility or accountability. So responsible and accountable get confused sometimes. The notion is responsible is the person who is supposed to execute, or the people who are supposed to execute this process. Accountable is ideally a single person who is ultimately responsible or accountable that this gets done. So a very common scenario would be a responsible party is someone who works in the function, who is day-to-day driving a process. They are responsible to do the thing. The client needs billed on the first of the month. That person or that team is responsible to do it. The person who is accountable that it happens is probably the CFO or the director of finance or the controller. They aren't doing the work, but they're going to hear about it if the work isn't getting done. Okay?
Yeah, and a lot of times when I see challenges in businesses, sometimes when I ask, well, who then is accountable? And it's, to some degree, who really owns it at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear the single throat to choke. I don't really like that analogy, but you hear it. Well, they'll say, well, person A and person B, Jim and Susan.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, which one?
Yeah.
And a lot of times process degradation or operational performance issues can sometimes lead or drive to just, well, there's not one person that really understands I'm going to take it and run with it. And that leads to problems.
A common phrase is, if there isn't a single person who owns it, nobody does.
Yeah.
If it's multiple people, nobody owns it. So that's great for responsible and accountable. Consulted exists for who do we need to get input from before decisions get made, or who is a group or party or stakeholder who has a voice in whether or not this thing happens or how it gets done. They are not the decision maker, but they are affected stakeholders who we want to consult before we do something. Informed is these are folks that we share what is going to happen if it affects them before it happens, or we might report after the fact if they just want to know what took place.
All right, so if RACI is an ownership model, let's talk about OVIS for a minute.
Yeah, they are related. OVIS is specifically a version of RACI, but it's for decision rights. Who gets to make the call? So OVIS stands for the owner. The owner is the one who primarily makes the decision. It's their normal day job to have this decision. The veto, or V is the veto, that's veto power, and that is the ultimate person who could countermand the decision, but very big caution around veto. It should be used very sparingly. If veto gets used all the time, who actually is the owner, really? It's not who we said it is, and that's a problem of empowerment. The I is for the influencer, an influencer or influencers. These are folks who have input and they will be involved in execution of the decision. And then S is for support. They're folks who have input, but they aren't part of the decision. So once again, OVIS, owner, veto, influencer, and support.
Great. So if in your business you get pulled into a project and you hear these two terms, hopefully now you have an idea of what they are. But two, if you're in a position or on a team where things are not going very well, performance is weak, there's just
frustration, confusion, churn,
then look at these two models, Google them, throw it in ChatGPT or Claude, pull up some information on them, and use them as ways to then talk with the team and ask questions to find out if there are ownership or decision rights issues.
Yeah, and you might think, listening to this, oh, well, aren't those things always obvious and clear? The answer is no. They're often very unclear, and it creates all kinds of challenge around execution.
Too many times things are just assumed, and when you talk about this with the team and get clarity, usually operations can pick up and you can move faster.
Yes, correct. Okay, good. Let's keep going.
Okay. How about ADKAR?
Yeah, ADKAR is a change management framework that the ProSci organization created, and there are numerous change management models you can use. This one is, I think, pretty commonly accepted as one of the top. ADKAR is ADKAR, stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So when an organizational change is happening, or any type of change that is going to affect people, great organizations plan in advance for that to bring the audience along to get the desired behavior or change in behavior that we want. So awareness of the need for change. So how do we help the organization, the individuals understand that doing this is a good thing? We have a reason to make this change. We want to have the people have desire to support the change. So, okay, I understand why we're doing it. What is going to motivate them to want to go through this change? Jeff, you do a lot of system changes or system integrations that affect how people do their work every day. So them being aware of why we're doing it and having a desire to support the change is a big deal.
Yeah, and one of the things that I do typically start with early in a process with a company is trying to understand how broad is the awareness of this being a problem. Is it really a problem, and how bad is it? So sometimes it's pain point identification, it's constraint identification.
What's the business case? What's the benefit? What's going to happen if we don't make the change?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have awareness. Why are we doing it? Desire to support the change. The next one, the K, is knowledge of how to change. So great. I hear that we need a new ERP system. I guess I understand the business case. It sounds like it would make my life easier. Excellent. Now, what do I do? What are you actually asking me to do? So what's the knowledge of what I'm supposed to do or how to change? What's the process we're going to follow? What support will we have? And then the A is ability to demonstrate the skills and behaviors necessary. So this often comes with training, practice, time to get used to the change, but some increase or support in their ability to execute the change. And then the final is reinforcement, which is so critical to make the change stick, which is follow-up training, measurement, support, communication, etc. So
yeah, and sometimes that reinforcement is especially important in smaller changes that are easier to go back to habits. Company that switches their ERP, it's kind of hard to go back when you turn the old one off and turn the new one on. But when it comes to process change, we all know that habits take 30 days to stick, and sometimes people adopting a new process could still do it the old way and the new way. And so that's where that piece is so important. So,
and I'm glad you said that, because there are so many instances where we see people who have been asked to go through a process of change, and we used to do it one way, and now we need to do it the other way. And it could include doing it with a different system. And then we dig under the hood, and they're still using the original Excel worksheet because that's their workaround that they did the first time. Mm-hmm. And if we haven't made a great case and we haven't really measured it and supported and reinforced, they're just going to stick with that spreadsheet workaround no matter what system we give. Okay, and there are a ton of other change management models you can go look up. But if you're in an organization and it's about to do something that is a significant change and there hasn't been an intentional change management or adoption support effort, I would recommend you raise the red flag.
So we're ready to go to operational performance?
Yes, let's look at how do organizations increase performance, get things done more effectively, or really maybe dig into where the problems come from. How do they deal with that stuff? Let's talk some of those.
Yeah, so here's a couple different ones. I'm going to start with the AIDA model, AIDA. Sometimes you'll learn this in marketing class if you took a marketing class in college. Where this is especially helpful is when you're trying to push an idea, whether that's internally within the business or externally on people, you're trying to motivate people to buy a product. This model is really helpful. It stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. So what are we doing to get the attention of the people we want to motivate? What are we doing to create the interest in them? And really more just generate interest. So they want this, whatever it is. Again, an idea we're selling internally or something we're selling to prospects and customers. What will create the desire and then get them to pull the trigger and act. So attention, interest, desire, and action. Good example of this. I use this all the time, but one pretty fun example was when I was at Paycor and was leading the marketing function. We were trying to find a way to get the attention of an audience of a new product we were rolling out. We hired Second City, the famous group that feeds a lot of people to Saturday Night Live. So we were spending a lot of money on a campaign, but we really needed to understand the full campaign. Second City and their work was going to be used for the awareness. This is how we're going to use their output to get the awareness of our audience. Then we've got to have the rest of the campaign that's going to get interest, create desire, and get people to act.
Yeah,
so
great.
Yeah, that's one.
I love it. You could use that. I guess you said internal stakeholder management. It's almost a sort of a change management model to some degree, really, and then certainly put it in a marketing framework. Great. What about producing something at scale? Talk about Agile and Scrum.
Yeah, a lot of times the term Agile is used in software development. It can be used a bit more broadly when there's ongoing work and it needs to be chunked in a way that's easier for the team then to take it and execute on it. And of course, in software development, writing code. But this, again, could be applied to just about anything in business. So the Agile is kind of the overall philosophy of the approach. A lot of times it's compared to the older legacy model of waterfall.
Got it. Okay.
Waterfall is, we write our requirements, we write them in detail. We've got a 100-page booklet of everything we're going to do. And then we kind of work our way through that and we develop everything and then we deploy it and then we test it. The Agile model is a bit more, we're going to chunk it. So it's going to be more iterative.
So is this a larger layman's term? There's a large undertaking, and we're going to break it into bites that we can go tackle in.
That's right.
In smaller chunks.
And to some degree, there's an idea behind it of called a minimally viable product, the MVP.
Got it.
So we don't need to boil the ocean or have everything big bang all at once. We're gonna build toward a version that we're comfortable going out with, and then we're going to iterate for a long time after that.
Got it. I saw this take place in a large software development project, really a company that was not yet on the market, didn't have its product in market. It wasn't commercialized yet, and it's 600 or 700 software engineers doing many different parts of this project, but this was an Agile sprint masterclass.
Yes.
This was everything they talked about was how they broke the big project down into pieces and then would go to sprints and then they debrief so.
So if you've got a big initiative that involves a lot of people and is going to be over a series of months, let's say, you might want to look at the Agile methodology. And terms you'll hear here are Scrum or Kanban, sprints, backlogs, user stories. All those are terms that you'll hear within the Agile methodology.
Yeah. Okay, good. What else? What's another one?
Another one is Six Sigma. Sigma, you can
black
Google
belts, green belts.
You got it,
all
the karate belts you want to get. You start with like a green or a yellow belt, and you can work your way up from there. But Six Sigma is all about very, very few mistakes in a process within 1 million attempts. And I probably should have pulled up the number and found out what it is, but it's, if Delta is trying to make sure that when they take planes off the ground, that their crash rate or their, engine failure rate is within a 6 Sigma.
Gotcha.
That's very few issues, very few errors. And so this is Six Sigma is used in business. And one of the ways of building towards Six Sigma is DMAIC or DMAIC.
Okay.
And so that stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So if Delta wants to do their best at engines not catching fire.
I am flying tomorrow, so can we use
that's why
can we talk about
this.
donuts instead?
If we want to make sure that every donut comes out reasonably round and not like some weird shape.
Yes.
You better?
That's way better. That makes me happier.
Then we can use the DMAIC model to help us orchestrate and evaluate. And so we define what we want. there's something called an input-output model. So what are the inputs into donuts?
Yes.
What's the output? And what happens all in the middle?
Yep.
I'm getting hungry.
Yes.
And then we're going to define that in detail. We're going to measure it consistently. We're going to analyze the output. We're going to tweak and iterate where it breaks or where it's not working well. We're going to iterate, improve.
Yeah.
And then we're going to control it. So again, the idea here is controllable output.
All right. So DMAIC is not just manufacturing. It's any type of a process, though, but I imagine it's pretty common in manufacturing.
Common in manufacturing, common in really any process where you're trying to really control the output consistently, and there's a large volume of throughput.
Okay, so that's good. And while we're talking about throughput, let's just go to theory of constraints then, because that's a term used in the theory of constraints in the book that you've referenced before, and maybe I think our favorite Reads episode about Eli Goldratt, who came up with the theory of constraints. But throughput is the ultimate measure of success from the theory of constraints. What are the other parts of the theory of constraints, the key steps that we need to care about?
It's all about identifying the constraint, elevating it above everything else, and solving that constraint, and then moving on to the next big constraint.
So it's continuous improvement. How do you get better incrementally? How do you get more donuts out of the oven in my belly?
That's right.
Okay.
Is the oven the constraint?
Yes.
The
icing,
our parking lot the constraint?
Yeah, okay. How do we get more donuts? Okay, good. So another version of this that I encountered with a client, this is one where I specifically went and had to Google, but these were some retired Ford Motor Company manufacturing guys who started a separate business. And they had the PDCA model that they used, it's all about continuous improvement. And PDCA stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act. So we have a current bit of performance that we have. We then decide, okay, we have an idea for how we might make it better. So we're going to plan the change. We're going to do, which is test the change in a small pilot or a small scale. We're going to check and see how we did. And then if the results are better, then we're going to act and implement the change permanently or successfully. So that's a continuous cycle PDCA. What do we think we theorize would be a better way to do this? Plan it, do it in a small scale,
pilot.
Check results, pilot, and then go. Okay? Good.
Great. I think we've got one more.
We have one more, and once again, this is something I heard on a shop floor when there was a failure of some kind, and it was the 5 why process. So this is simply getting in a room with the people who have inputs to the situation and start asking why. Well, that oven broke down. Why? Well, because the igniter was broken. Why? So you go through the why process and go deeper and deeper until you get to the real root cause, or this is a root cause analysis process.
Yeah, I think a good question to think about there is this: what we do, and that I don't mean like the big what we do in business, but in this area, in this function, in this process, it's not producing the output that we want, and you start the why process.
Yes.
And it could lead to all kinds of things, but a lot of times companies will have assumptions, or they'll answer one why, but they don't really get to the root, so they end up not really solving it.
Yeah, which is the theory, and it of course does not need to be just 5. If it takes 10, do 10. If you get to it in 3, but the key is you need to go deal with the real cause of the issue, not a symptom of the issue. And so 5Y, by the way, works in any sphere of life. If you have something that's not going the way you want, having a thoughtful exploration of the whys all the way to the actual root cause is a pretty effective way to make progress.
I think we nailed it in about 23 minutes.
I'd say right on.
We've got another series of these coming, so hopefully these are helpful. Give us your feedback. We look forward to hearing from you. And
sounds like the early edge for the week.
There you go. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening to The Early Edge, a mentorship podcast for next generation leaders. If you have feedback or would like to submit questions or a topic idea, email us at earlyedge@reddogadvisors.com
or earlyedge@altaimpact.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review. See you next time.